Wow, where do I even begin? I guess I could start off by saying she's back. Welcome to the very first episode of Mental Memo. This is it, you guys. This is the intro episode. This is the very first one I'm going to release. And if you're watching the video version of this podcast, you'll notice this is a little bit different than most podcasts that you are used to watching or listening to. And that is because I am currently in a park in Los Angeles recording a podcast by myself. This is so nerve-wracking, you guys. I hate filming in public, number one, but filming a podcast in public? Oh, so scary, and it feels so cringy, but I'm going to be brave and I'm going to do it. And I think it's with a good purpose and a good cause. So I'm excited. I guess we're just going to dig straight into this. If you're new here, my name is Bree Lynch. I am the host of this podcast, and I'm so excited to have you here. But I'm going to be honest with you, this is not my first rodeo. I have had a podcast before. I was hosting it for about a year. It was pretty successful. I absolutely loved doing it, and I have missed it so much. But some life circumstances happened, and I felt the need to pivot, which actually is a pretty good transition, if I do say so myself. This podcast is called Mental Memo, and it was actually very inspired by this book that I read every single morning that is called The Pivot Year. The Pivot Year is basically a book that is 365 days to becoming the best version of yourself. And the author, Brianna Weiss, writes these little passages or poems that address a different discomfort in life every day. And I actually came across one when I was just flipping through my book the other day, trying to find the current page that I was on. And I came across page 91. And I want to share the first two sentences that she writes with you guys, just to kind of start this episode off. What if you were never meant to get it right the first time, but to build through trial and error? Now, I just told you guys, I am not new at this. I've hosted a podcast before. It was called URL versus IRL. If you guys want to check it out, it is still up. And I absolutely loved that podcast. It was my pride and joy. But when I passed by this day 91, and I'm currently on day like 161 or something like that. When I passed by this, I felt like it was screaming at me. It was screaming at me that it was really time for me to record this intro episode. It's something that I've been putting off for a little bit because it's scary, right? Getting out of your comfort zone is terrifying. And I think that we're only a beginner once. I actually had a really good friend say that to me recently, and it was so inspiring, and it just made me want to get past the first step. Now, what if she's right? Maybe the reason that I don't do that podcast anymore is because I was supposed to continue building through trial and error. And this might be the continuation of me building right here, right now, by starting this new podcast. And I honestly think, obviously, I'm going to tell you guys what this premise of this podcast is or what I think it's going to be about. But what if she's right? Now, the reason that I'm recording at a park in Los Angeles right now when I don't even live here is because I've noticed that epiphanies come in the most ordinary moments sometimes. Like sometimes they're just hidden in plain sight. I came to this park this morning to eat my breakfast, drink my coffee that I spilled, by the way. But I just started like writing, and I was like, oh man, this first episode is going to be so good. You guys, I have notes written down. I was writing what I thought the first episode should be, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I have the gear on me. Why don't I just do it now? There's no better time like the present, right? So I went back to my car, grabbed my Osmo Pocket, grabbed my microphone, and said, I guess it's time. So I want you guys to kind of anticipate that a little bit with this podcast because whenever creativity strikes, I am going to try to act on it immediately. It doesn't mean that my thoughts are always going to be 1,000% together. It's going to be a little bit more raw and like rough than I am probably going to be comfortable with. But I think it's all about getting out of our comfort zone, right? I actually read something else as I was also flipping through that page, trying to get to my page of this morning. And it says, comfort becomes a vice when what once held you together begins to hold you back. When what's comfortable short term makes you lose sight of what's best for you long term. My comfort zone was literally becoming my vice. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I have referenced my old podcast. I tell people, yeah, I host a podcast, blah, blah, blah. Girl, you haven't been hosting that podcast for a year. You haven't been hosting that podcast for a year. And it's time to get back to it. My first podcast was released on my birthday. So maybe I should do the same thing with my second podcast. It feels fitting, right? So that's kind of my goal here, is to release this podcast on June 28th. And if I did, first of all, pat on the back, girl. Proud of you. You're welcome. And I'm so happy for you. And secondly, happy dirty 30. That's right. I'm going to be 30 years old. Now, I think that the inspiration for this podcast, Mental Memo, right? It's got an interesting little name. Alliterations. I love them so much. They are my favorite thing. Mental Memo. It's kind of inspired by how I operate in life. I don't have a great memory as a person. And so I have a tendency of writing things down that I don't want to forget. But I am a creative and I'm constantly finding inspiration from all over. I think that as a person, I'm trying my best to learn how to be more grounded, more present, more attentive, more just eyes wide open in the world that I'm living in. And I'm trying my best to just experience life a little bit better. I have this weird, is it weird? Or is it something that we all do and don't really admit to or don't think about very much? I'll explain it to you guys. I have a tendency of living my life looking through a lens that I think others are looking through, right? So instead of just experiencing life and doing whatever it is that I can do to make myself feel alive, I have a tendency of trying to imagine how other people are viewing the life that I'm living and viewing me living my life. Is that weird? Please tell me in the comments below. I would love to know. Because I don't know why, actually. I don't have an explanation for that. And I usually have an explanation for everything. But I'm kind of sick and tired of it. And I don't think that that's the point. I think that the point is to continuously learn and to keep growing and to learn from each other. And I think that that's why we're able to continuously be inspired by each other, sometimes even without speaking. How many times have you been inspired by a song that you heard or a video that you watched from somebody else online, or a conversation that you overheard in a coffee shop, or a piece of art that you looked at? We're not even talking to each other. We're not even communicating, and we can be inspired by each other, right? You can just see somebody do something. You could watch somebody playing a sport and be inspired. You could literally physically look at somebody and be inspired by them. Is that not weird? I think that because I have such a horrible memory, sorry, landing my plane, coming back to where I was going with that, I have a tendency of writing things down. I always have a pen on me. At minimum, I always have a pen on me. Write things down on my hand if I have to. I'll write it down on my forearm like a child. I always have a notebook in my purse at all times. It's small. It's like maybe this big. I have so many random things written down in that notebook. And I carry sticky notes on me if I have a purse. Write them down on sticky notes. Write them down on a napkin if I can't find anything. And I shove it in my pocket or I shove it in my purse for later. Do I always refer back to it? Nope. Wish I would. I've even gotten in the habit of writing in books that I've been reading recently. It's actually really therapeutic. And I think that if you're a person that has trouble reading, like I kind of do sometimes, physically writing in the book and underlining things, highlighting things, and writing out the summary of a paragraph for educational books, at least, writing out the summary of a paragraph is been so helpful for me. But that's me just getting sidetracked again. I want to have a place to put those thoughts. I want to have a place to come back to them. I have a folder in my phone of voice memos of shower thoughts that I have, random things that come up for me when I'm driving, and I just start talking to myself, right? Is it surprising? No, I am a podcaster, but I have a tendency of just doing that, and I think that a lot of the times I'm onto something, and I don't want to let that go. You know what I mean? I think that those things really need a place to live, and so for me, I think this is where they're going to live. I think that we have a lot to learn from each other. And I don't anticipate this podcast only being a solo podcast, in case if you were curious. My last podcast was almost solely interview based, and I absolutely loved that about it. But I think that a habit that I got into was that I had to record in studio, which is really hard sometimes, especially with the fact that I travel for work and my work comes up really sporadically. So hence why I'm outside in a park today, facing my fears, getting out of my comfort zone because creativity struck. Just like I pull out my phone to record a voice memo, I want to do the same thing with this podcast. And I think that I know that I can. I just have to do it. And it's going to be a little uncomfortable for me sometimes, but I think that it's going to be really great. And I'm so excited to share that with you guys. The friends of mine that I have talked to about this podcast seem to really dig the idea. They kind of think of it as like an audio journal, like scrapbook in a way. And I don't think that this is only going to be about my own experiences and necessarily me getting my most vulnerable feelings out into the world for public consumption. But I do think that we need a place for all of these things to live. I don't know if I'm the only person that writes stuff down on a napkin. I don't think so. I've seen it in movies, okay? But I just think that getting out of our comfort zone can be so scary, right? Because the thing that we're scared of, I think that a lot of the times we think of that thing that we're so afraid of to be like a bump in the road or maybe like a little bit of a mountain that we're going to have to climb that's going to be really hard. But what if we stop thinking about it like that? What if we stop thinking about it as like a speed bump or a mountain? What if we think of it as a ramp? Okay? Stick with me. What if it's a ramp to send us into what's coming next for us? What if it is a ramp that is literally going to project us to where we're supposed to be, right? Like Brianna said, what if you knew you were never meant to get it right the first time, but to build through trial and error? Maybe the first time is literally just the road that gets you to the ramp, right? So that's how I'm trying to think of this. This is how I'm trying to live my life, because I'm so sick and tired of being afraid to live. I'm so sick and tired of just like constantly thinking about what other people are thinking and how they're going to receive something. I think I'm a very empathetic person, and I'm a water sign, so I tend to go a little too deep sometimes and not know how to come back up for air. And then I live down there, and it's not good for me. Um, but sometimes it is. And I'll actually tell you about a time that it was. It's kind of what pushed me to record this episode right now. I did a podcast recently with some friends of mine at Race Service. They have a podcast that just came out recently. I was literally their fourth episode. And I think that our episode was so left field for them that it was actually kind of inspiring. Like, their podcast is an automotive based podcast, okay? And for those of you that don't know, what I do for a living is I'm a stunt driver. So I work on movies and TV shows, which is kind of where my first podcast got its concept from. It was an internet versus reality podcast. It was very inspired by like media and how we see things on our screens versus how they actually are in real life. It doesn't matter. We're not going to talk about that podcast because I don't do it anymore. But I did this podcast with my friends at Race Service. They were supposed to be interviewing me about being a stunt driver. And instead, I just kept getting way too deep into real life stuff and then coming right back up out of the water. And I think that it actually worked for us really well. They seemed to really like it. It was the longest episode they had recorded to date, and I think that they learned a lot, and I learned a lot from them, and I was very inspired by them, and we started talking about algorithms and that kind of thing. And the host of that podcast, Andrew, actually said something to me that kind of made me want to record this episode because I was anticipating recording this when I got home to New Jersey. And he said, "You can't chase the algorithm, you have to chase authenticity." And I was like, mic drop, bro. You should have said that on mic. And now I'm going to take it. And I'm going to say it on my first episode of my podcast. But anyways, this podcast episode that I recorded with them, I think it went really well. I was very inspired by it. And they told me that the episode was probably going to be coming out in about a month. And I have literally about a month until my 30th birthday, which felt very fitting because my first podcast was released on my 28th birthday. Like I said, I've taken about a year off. I think that 29 has been the most transformative year of my life. I personally don't think it was coincidental. I felt like 29 was honestly going to be a little bit of a throwaway year. Kind of felt like I was just going to be waiting to turn 30. So I figured while I wait, I might as well better myself in as many ways possible. So I made this goal list for myself. They were vague enough. My goals were vague enough that I wasn't getting hung up on details, but they were specific enough that I had a direction and I knew where I wanted to go. There were a couple of things on that goal list, and I'll just share a few of them with you. Read more. Get in the best physical shape you've been in your adult life. Continue to create. Get better at expressing yourself. Use your voice for good. And to make my first investment. I have one goal left to check off before I turn 30. And I think that having a podcast out in the world again is just going to make turning 30 that much sweeter. And I'm so excited to release this, you guys. I think that this is just divine timing. Like, this is just perfect timing. And I'm so excited to release it. And I am so happy to have a podcasting platform back. And I hope you guys like the concept of this podcast. Please reach out to me and let me know what you think, and what you would like to hear and what you would like to see. And if you guys have any questions, maybe I'll do a write-in thing. And I think you guys are going to learn a lot about me in this. It's not about me. It's about us. But I think you will learn quite a bit about me. I think it's just going to come out. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening to me. This feels safe. This feels like home. I know I've said it a million times already, but thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't wait to talk to you again. Maybe tomorrow? Okay, bye.